Hi, everybody. Would like to call this meeting of the Hindley Homes and Royal Building Committee to order at 6:01 p.m. on May 24th, 2023. First order of business is approving the meeting minutes from our last meeting on April 27th. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes? Jameson moves. Paul seconds. All in favor? Aye. Great. I don't see any members of the public here for public comment purposes. Let me see who's joining. Oh, okay. Hey, Paula. What I would like to, though, just point out.
Kevin,
Go ahead.
before you start, Paula, we're not talking about homes tonight. If you don't want to be here, we're just talking about Hindley and Royal and those cost estimates. So if you'd rather have your evening, you're certainly welcome,
okay.
But you don't have to be here. Okay?
Okay, great. Thank you so
Good
much.
to see you, though.
Yeah, nice to see you too. Have a great night. Thank you.
All right.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Very, very short chair's report. One bit of good news, as folks saw in the emails, is that we got the OSCG&R approval letters for phase 2 for Hindley and Royal, which, if I understand it right, Laurel and Dave, that's kind of the OSCG&R checkoff that we can go to bid.
Yes. Yep. You need that. Yep.
So that's great news. The other piece of the can we go to bid equation we're going to talk about this evening. One thing, just as a reminder to everybody, folks saw the article in the Stanford Advocate following our last meeting. Just a reminder that these meetings are televised and recorded, and so members of the public and the press are more likely than not watching, and we should just conduct ourselves as if that's the case. And that's a reminder to me as much as it is to anybody else on this Zoom. With that, really, the point of this evening's meeting is to go through the updated cost estimates that were prepared by O&G. Dave Martin has looked closely at those, as have Jill and I. We had a pre-conversation yesterday with Laurel, Eric, and Travis. And I think, working backwards, Dave and Laurel, the question that I think we need answered for the committee is, based on the revised estimates and amounts in contingency and amounts appropriated and amounts in contingency, do we have enough unencumbered dollars available for each of Hindley and Royal to go out to bid and to award contracts, assuming that the bids come in at or under the amounts shown in the revised estimates, either with or without the alternates. That to me is the question we need to answer for the committee. And if we can get a yes for each of Hindley and Royal, then I think we're good to go. If not, if the answer to that is no or sort of, then we need to discuss it a little bit further. But maybe you can walk us, start with, maybe you can walk us through that analysis.
Okay, so I'm ready to talk about Dave, unless you wanted to do anything.
Why don't we start with Hindley, because I think that's the one that probably requires.
Right, and you have, Chris, do you want us to bring up any of the excerpts from the packet pieces that went out, or?
If it's easier, I think it's probably easier to share the screen, just for everyone's benefit.
Sure. So we'll
I would do what I call the executive summary sheet. Yep, that's the one.
That one right there. Yeah, go ahead, Laura.
I was going to start with Royal, but that's okay.
I'm sorry.
Because that's a better story. All right. So anyhow, what we did is we redid estimates based on, remember we did a construction documents estimate a while ago, several months ago, and we've reevaluated the construction documents as they've been developed. And this is what's on the sheet now, what's on my screen is just the summary of where the dollars landed. I also shared and sent out our entire construction cost estimate, but this is just numbers pulled from there. So the presentation of this is where what we are seeing on the documents now. It's our revised construction documents estimate. So we have a total here of 29 million, and again, this is for Henley. What we saw before was around 27, so there is some sort of an increase, if you will. In totality, our budget for Henley is 27,550,000. So that means that if the bids came in per our estimate, we are anticipating being about $1.5 million over budget. We also did want to highlight what we estimated the ad alternates to be, because remember we went through that list of ad alternates, and that's about $300,000. So if you're looking at Henley over budget with the alternates, we're around 1.8. And so then it became, well, what's kind of like the big buckets? What were their drivers for the changes in the last couple of months? And what we did is we highlighted that there's basically 4 categories, and it's the same on both schools as far as the construction increases. And it mainly had to do with the security design increase. So as they're going through a state process and just finalizing the documents towards the end, certain scopes of work that were security related were being reflected on the drawing. So we've identified what that value was based on the latest set of documents. Also the ceiling replacement, there's more ceiling replacements because of the work that's going on above ceiling. A lot of it was driven from the added mechanical roof screens. Now you have to do structural framing underneath above the ceiling, whereas before we were just doing the piping and ductwork for the HVAC units. So by adding the AC, so because of the structural increases, it just seemed to be there's more ceiling replacement that's going to need to occur. Obviously, the mechanical screening itself, this is what's up on the roof. That's not reflected in the documents, and we were able to quantify that. And then it's larger here than it is over at Royal, but each project has what we'll call unsuitable soils. There was an environmental testing done, hygienics performed it a couple of months ago, and the report just came to light that there is some unsuitable soils that we know we will be encountering when we excavate for the additions. So hygienics put together an estimated quantity of what they think we're gonna run into. So we're reflecting that now in our estimates. So these are soils that you can't just take them out and put them back in. You'd have to haul them off site and dispose of them. So there's this unsuitable soil. Again, this is a much larger number at Henley than it is at Royal. So that's one. Yep.
Laurel, is part of this because of the drainage situation in the middle of the field of Royal? Do we have to take that soil out too? Is that why this is such a big number?
Well, this is Henley, so this is a big number at Henley. And just to flash Royal real quick.
Henley is where we have to redo the whole drainage down through. Is that, I'm asking, is this part of that, or is it strictly just for the footprints of the additions?
It's mostly the footprint of the addition, and it could be, we're also assuming some soils will be encountered when we're doing the underground detention structures, but I don't think it has anything to do with the field.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, Travis, does it make sense just to preempt, the question? Could you give a quick summary of what unsuitable soil categories are comprised of, what that really means?
Or Dave actually had a great definition of just sort of unsuitable for construction.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Correct. It's just the material that's there while it's fine, while it's there now, just based on what we're putting back on it, whether it's parking or structure, it's not fit to support what's going in and around it in the future.
And I would just add to that anything being carted off site because the nature of we're excavating soil and we can't retain it all on site, so it has to be carted off and it gets tested, and then that's what hygienics performed, and then it falls into 3 categories of native natural soil, polluted soil, or contaminated soil. So there's some of each of that. There was no hazardous soil found on the site, which is worst case. And this is not out of the ordinary per your consultant hygienics to find these different soil levels.
So I'm going to guess that, you know, my evaluation of why it's so big at Henley is because we have the sprawling single-story addition at Henley, whereas the other 2 projects, you know, it's more compact as far as what the additions are. So there's less excavation for the building footprint. So that's the construction. These are the actual construction cost increases. Then we have what we'll call soft costs. So on the you know, we have the construction, the GMP side, and then we have the owner side. So Kevin had been working with his vendors and getting some. This is just reflecting items that are more than what were carried in the original budget. So there's an owner soft cost page. It's secondary to our page of construction costs, and it's just tracking all the costs that you would be spending not going through us, you as the owner. So you've got the security system, we've got movers that were not accounted for originally. There's more commissioning involved than what was originally thought. And a difference between Henley and Royal is the portable and the playground relocation. We don't have these types of items of work at Royal, just at Henley, but this is more than what was originally budgeted for. So
but to be clear on the portables, just so again so that people understand, Kevin, is it because we have to rent a portable at Henley because we can't move the existing portables because they won't survive the move? We have to remove the existing ones and rent a new one. Is that correct?
Right. That's correct. We originally looked at moving the existing portables, and all the vendors that we were working with wouldn't even give us a proposal just because of the age and the condition, and it ended up being the best path forward was just to rent a unit for
Got it.
phase 1.
Thank you.
And this is just to be clear, this isn't the entire story of this itemized soft cost increases, because, you know, we just got Edutech's quote in, and it was around, I don't know, between 49 and 50 something thousand for each school to replace some data cabling. So that's not even reflected in here yet. It was just because of the timing of getting the information out to the building committee. It didn't land yet. So there's a little bit more than that as well. But I did want to
say that number again. I just didn't hear you, the Edutech quote.
They were varied between the schools, from 49,000 to I think 55, somewhere in that neighborhood. But each school has that type of cost associated with it, the replacement of the data cabling.
Okay.
But Laurel, there is a $75,000 allowance for technology in each one of those schools. So I think that analysis still needs to be
right.
reviewed.
And yeah, because I don't know how much of that is computers or anything else that they're doing. So yeah, it could be offset by that. So these are the big categories of the cost increases with what we saw, just to be able to present that information to the building committee. And then we are also including in this latest estimate, we still have design contingency. We're carrying about 1% just because we knew that at the time we were doing this, we knew that there was those other costs coming in from the owner side, not knowing what to anticipate. And just if there was any other tweaks between now and, you know, when the bids come in. We also have escalation that we're still carrying. So these may or may not come into play. They're not something we saw in the drawing. We were just making sure that we had enough money. And we also did not reduce either of the 2 contingencies. So there's still that 670 for the CM contingency, and there's still the $1,019,000 for the owner's contingency. So those are still being included. So
go ahead. Oh. I'm sorry. No, finish up.
Okay, so having these contingencies still included, there were some construction increases, but this is where we have landed as of today, yesterday, or the day before, somewhere in that neighborhood.
So is it accurate to say that if we bid out with the alternates, with the add alternates in there, the 308,000 of add alternates in there, and the bids come in at the 1,838,612, or around that number. Let's assume the estimates are accurate, and we in effect allocate the amount of available contingency of 2,179. Effectively, we have a $340,000 cushion if we award all the contracts at the 1,838,612 number. Is that an accurate way to analyze it?
It's accurate, but not advised. And that's why last time when we talked about, and that was reflected in your meeting minutes, what I would propose is if we do come in and it's 1.8 million over and you wanted you wanted all these alternates, we would go back to that theory that maybe we should hold off on, just to be able to preserve the contingencies, hold off on awarding these other trade contracts.
Right. Totally understood that we have that lever, that tool in our toolkit if we want to or feel like we need to. But again, just going back to the question that I started the conversation with of, if the bids come in consistent with the estimates, do we have the free cash to be able to award? We can adjust the timing of awarding certain of the contracts based on our comfort level, or we can, if we choose to, once we have more accurate visibility into the actual bid numbers, consider asking for additional appropriation to increase contingency, et cetera. But we think, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, I'm asking it as a question. We think we have enough to go to bid and award if the bids come in at or near the estimate, and we have about a $340,000 cushion.
That is correct.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
So based on this, are you recommending that we can talk in a minute about, I think there's 3 different levers we could pull. One of them you just mentioned. We have alternate, additional dollars via appropriation, short-term or long-term, and stretching out awarding of trade contracts. But what we want but for today, we hang up the phone or hang up the go-to-meeting. We should go to bid, correct?
Yes, absolutely, because these are our estimates. Let's go get the real numbers and see what we're dealing with. I would not want to delay going out to bid. You definitely want to go out to bid unless you really want to start looking at the contract or the scope of work and start carving things back out. If you don't want to do that, let's just go to bid.
Yeah. And I think the good thing is it means that we can do the analysis of carving of not doing all of the add alternates. That's a for later.
Right. Once
discussion.
we get bids, if we're in a bad place, we can start looking at a VE situation.
I'm sorry, Paul. Say that again. I just didn't. I talked.
Yeah. Sorry. Once we get the bids, we don't want to touch contingencies now. Once we get bids and know what our real numbers are, then if we're coming in higher than we anticipate, then if we have to do some value engineering or go back to something, we can do that. But most important thing is to get the bids on the street, get the real numbers in here, and figure out where we are, because we have to pay somebody to do this work. The cost estimates are great. We hope they line up so we have an idea. But until you have a subcontractor review the plans, ask the questions, RFIs, get everything in here, that's where we need to be.
Right. Thank you. No, that's helpful input.
Laurel, I would suggest that you go through Royal and then we could sort of collectively ask questions.
Okay. So on Royal, it's the same story as it was before, in that we still remain under budget, just not as much. If doing the same analysis for Henley, you wanted to accept the add alternates as what we estimated, it throws you a little bit over. It's the same story as far as the reasons behind the overall increases on the construction side. Owner soft cost, same thing, again, minus the portable and the relocation of the playground, because we don't need to do that there. Again, we're carrying the same percentages of contingencies that we had over at Henley, so we still have the 1% design contingency. We still have a little bit of escalation because work isn't starting for a couple months. We're still carrying the same CM contingency percentage, which I believe is 3%, and we have an owner's contingency of 1,101,000. So this one is, we currently still estimating it to be under budget, but just not as much as it was last time.
But slightly over budget if we bid all the alternates, right? And we still have, using that same analysis, right? We're over budget by 69,000, but we have an aggregate contingency of 2,250,000. Again,
Correct.
not just to answer the very simple kind of current question of, we have enough unencumbered allocation to go to bid.
Correct. Correct. You definitely want to go to bid. You don't have to award, but you definitely want to go to bid.
Okay.
In fact, you can't award, not to bring up the bad thing, but you got that letter from OSCGNR. There's two things we need to award contracts. So we need to be chasing those things while we're out to bid. You need a flood management certification, and a building code modification has to be signed off on. It's right in the letter. So we can bid all day long. We can't award anything until obviously we're within budget, and also we satisfy those two conditions of the state.
Perfect. Questions following up on that presentation? Thank you, Laurel. That was super clear and helpful. Thank you for that.
David, Martin, do you want to talk for a minute about the research you did about, reminding us that these are three separate projects and that about transferring? It'd be tempting to think, we could just take a little from Royal to pay Homes, but Henley, but can you talk to that, the work that you did?
Yeah, sure. Can you guys hear me?
Sure can.
Yep.
Okay. I talked to Jen Charneski on this, and she is the final arbiter about how anything in town gets accounted for. These projects were all approved independently of one another. There is no such thing as a transfer from Royal to another school. If we need additional funds for either Holmes or Hindley, we are going to have to go back and ask for funds there. We can't use any, excess per se from Royal to apply to a different school. The accounting doesn't allow it for that to happen.
So subject to when we do a comparable meeting to this on Holmes, if we do decide we need to go back and ask for more, it would be on a school by school basis.
School by school, correct. And right now it looks like, at least so far, it looks like on Henley and Royal, we're good. We'll just have to see where Holmes comes out.
Right. Okay. Questions? Any further questions on the modified cost estimate and the bid process? Dr. Adley?
Yeah, thanks. Can I get a clarifying question for Royal? The amount that's in the itemized construction increase for ceiling replacement increases, I'm assuming that's nothing to do with the cafeteria, that's the ad alternate. I'm assuming that's a separate thing altogether.
Yes, that is not including the cafeteria, whatever the alternate is. The alternate will be in the alternate's number.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thanks.
Then I think a related topic is kind of the next topic but it's part of the bid process, is the other topic that's on the agenda, which is discussion on publicizing or publishing.
Chris, before you jump to that, sorry, Laurel, do you want to walk us back through the time frame so that we all can have top of mind sort of what dates we need to attend to in these next steps, when you'd go to bid, when we need to, and then maybe switch over, Chris. Sorry for interrupting.
Okay. So I'd like to bid tomorrow. I'd like to go out to bid tomorrow. And what I would do is Henley and Royal will have the bid due date be June 22nd, knowing that it'll probably get delayed a little bit. So the overall time frame, we said we were going to have all bids in for Henley and Royal somewhere around 4th of July. So when we go out to bid, hopefully tomorrow, we're going to tell the bidders they have June 22nd is our bid due date, but usually there's extensions that we do to answer questions and make revisions. So the targeting is the early July to have the bids in for Henley and Royal. We plan on going out to bid in 2 weeks for homes, although we haven't received the letter yet, but we don't think that that's going to hold us up. So we would be going out to bid for homes around June 7th or 8th. And then that bid would come in, those bids would come in mid-July. So by mid-July, we'll have all the values in, and we'll know exactly where we are with all 3 schools. When I receive the first round of bids in early July for Henley and Royal, I'm going to start scoping immediately the critical trade contractors. I want to get that process going just in case so that we can keep going. And then I would be coming to you, building committee, with all 3 schools, critical contractors that you need to approve in order to stay on schedule. The GMP will not be established yet at that moment in time, but you'll have a big financial picture of where we think we are dollar-wise. So as far as you meeting and making decisions between now, we just probably need to meet on homes because we're going to need to let you know where we are with homes with the cost estimate. So I would imagine we'll be ready in, I don't know, next week, Dave. I forgot to check with Bruce when he was going to be done with homes.
Yeah, well, I let's check because Monday is Memorial Day. I would say at this point, right, Laurel, we were looking to stagger that bidding. Was it a 2-week stagger in the bidding time frame?
Yes, it was 2 weeks. So
I would say at this point that we should target a meeting
on the 7th.
Correct. Yep. And that because at that point we also need the letter from the state on homes as well. We don't have that one yet, correct?
Correct. But that's because he was just Travis. I think you were just going to tomorrow, right?
Yep. Tomorrow morning we're meeting with
you. Yeah. So again, it's just I think that if we let the cards fall in there, we get the letter from OSCGR hopefully next week. We have the committee meeting. We get the estimate finalized next week so that we can get it published like we did with this information and convene on the 7th. And then barring any issues, we go to bid on the 8th, which is a 2-week stagger from tomorrow.
Right. And then if people, I think I sent out meeting invites for all 3 pre-bid meetings because we organized it with the principals. We have all pre-bid meetings scheduled already for all 3 schools. They'll all be on site, and it's between the 15th and the 16th of June. So we're doing Royal in the morning. I think it was 10:30 on site, and then Henley in the afternoon, the 15th at 1:30, and then Holmes was the Friday, the 16th. I can't remember. I think it was 10:30. But I sent meeting invites out if people wanted to attend that. It's an on-site
just to double check on those. Did you invite Paul Harding and Jameson to those? Did you invite the whole committee?
I don't think I invited the whole committee. I don't remember who I invited. So I don't think so. So
would you mind doing that? And then people can respond as to availability. And I know Paul, you wanted to schedule page turns on the bid packages.
Yeah.
I guess I would encourage you to coordinate directly with Dave and Laurel on that. I don't know if you guys have spoken about that so far.
No, I wanted to wait till the documents were done. I might want to wait until bids come in, if there's any massive RFIs that come in, because it may change some of the stuff.
Okay.
I just want to get a feel for what's out there.
Yeah, I just didn't want that part of the process for us to lose sight of it.
No, I'll coordinate with everybody.
Okay.
And I don't typically like to have pre-bid meetings mandatory because I don't like to limit the number of trade contractors, but we are planning on making this meeting mandatory for certain trades, abatement and demo, our mechanical contractors, and site work. just because they're occupied schools, they need to understand the constraints of working in the buildings. They're not wholehearted renovations, they're alterations. So I'm making it mandatory for certain trade contractors that have to be there. That means if they don't attend the pre-bid meeting, they can't bid the job. So I don't know, Paul, if you have an issue with that or not.
Abatement, mechanical, who was the third?
Site work.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to limit bidders, but I don't have a massive problem with it, but I don't like to limit bidders.
Yeah,
You know,
I
it might just be a
agree with
thing where,
you.
if it also is going to be a thing where someone might be, you know, if somebody comes back to you and says, hey, you know, my company is in Stanford, I'm super familiar with the area for the site work, I've driven by the school or something, I don't need to be at this meeting, then I think like a little leniency there, if that's what I would say on something like that.
Yeah, it's just that these are really funky areas where they need to get into existing buildings, where the boiler rooms are. We need everybody to understand what they're getting themselves into.
Well, we can also do it this way. If we're not well represented with a mandatory meeting, you only end up getting one or two.
Yeah.
We feel we need numbers that we might have to revisit, but that's fine.
We can sort of deal with it on a case-by-case basis too,
Mhm.
as it comes up, right?
Yeah, again, I agree with Paul. I don't typically like to limit them, but this is not a reno, it's not a new building, and they're occupied. They're going to be occupied while we're building. So.
Right. So as part of the bid process, you know, the question came up, gee, to what extent must we, should we, do we want to publish these drawings or make public the drawings that people are going to be bidding on? And, you know, part of that is, or the question really is an outgrowth of kind of the security discussion and the events in Nashville. And yeah, I think probably Eric and Travis are best suited to address this, but I think, you know, as part of the bid process, there's what we have to make available to the contractors so that they can bid, and then there's, you know, what we can electively choose to publicize as we get, you know, further into and even possibly past completion of the projects. But it sounds like we probably do need to make a fair amount of this public, but we can limit access to only those that are bidding. Is that correct, Laurel and Eric and Travis?
Well, I did speak with Karen Dunn. I mean, it's a public bid and they need the documents to bid. The security system itself is not in our bid documents. That's something that's being done directly by the school's security vendor. So none of that will be in there. When we issue bid documents, we have a secure FTP site, if you will, call it that. We'll know exactly who's logging on, who's downloading. Via email, so at least we'll have contact information, who's looking at the documents. I spoke with Karen Dunn, and she's not going to post any sort of drawings or specifications or anything. She's merely going to upload to the town website as well as the state website just a link, you know, the invitation to bid with the link that goes right into our FTP site. So again, in order for them to access our site, we will know who's got access to it.
Any questions, thoughts, reactions to that?
Chris, just one thing, you know, I think looking back on what we've seen in the past is that generally when we talk about security and things like that, when things like the details of the ins and outs of the security systems or specific things that are in place in the building for security, that's generally when we see committees enter into executive session so that those details and, you know, video presentation materials of that information is not available to the public who may be watching a meeting.
Okay.
So, and we've, you know, again, I don't recall a time that this committee has ever talked about those things in the public meeting. So I don't think that this committee has produced information that is putting the project at risk down the road.
Any other thoughts or reactions or questions on that? Jameson?
No, I was just going to say that it's not necessarily just the security; it's also layout of the school, obviously. So, just I think what you said, Laurel, is great. If that's how it's going to happen, and Karen Dunn's only going to post stuff that's links and nothing that has any of that information, that's great. But also, if we are on these meetings which are recorded and are displaying layouts as well as the security stuff, that we need to be conscious of that and make sure that we take care of that properly.
Will bidders be qualified? Is there a qualification process for bidders? I mean, like, can I bid? Like, could I go and get authorized to put a bid in even though I'm not qualified to do any of this?
There's a pre-qualification process, Chris. We ask for a bunch of credentials, and one of the main things is, per the state of Connecticut, if the contract value is ever over, it's $500,000, right, Laurel?
Yes.
Yeah, you have to be listed as a pre-qualified contractor through Department of Administrative Services in Connecticut. So there's a process to go through.
So that's helpful as another layer, right? It's not everybody who happens to be trolling the internet is going to be trying to access this stuff.
No, they'll have to get a hold of that invitation to bid, and then they'll go to the link through there.
Got it. Any other questions or input from folks on the call on any of the stuff we talked about so far? So I think, if not, then I think with that, then Laurel, you're authorized to go to bid, to start the bidding process for Royal and Hindley tomorrow.
Okay. And I plan on taking off like after tomorrow when I get everything out. I'm taking off Friday because I have to rest up. I got a big summer coming.
Don't worry,
Okay.
Chris.
Yes, you do.
Sunday, Monday.
No, Laurel.
You and Kevin.
No, you know what? Thank you. Awesome job, Jam, getting this done and put together. To you and the estimate team. So thank you. And then the next time we'll convene will be 2 weeks. 2 weeks from tonight when we talk about homes. If you could just maybe send an email update tomorrow once you've connected with Karen Dunn and you've got all systems are go, that would be good. And then
Yeah.
Travis, if you can let us know how the meeting on homes goes with the state, that would be great.
Will do.
Yeah.
And then maybe
as soon
Go
as
ahead.
we are out to bid, as soon as I got it all set, I will send the entire building committee. Because I think I did it last time. I said we were out to bid, and I'll give you the invitation to bids also so that you can look at the bid documents as well.
Great.
And then maybe just also in closing, thank you to Travis and Eric, if you would pass on your thanks to your team that rallied to get those, at least the documents for these two schools. And then, of course, Dave and Laurel and Bruce and whoever else on your team with the cost estimate. We know we've been, it's a big project, or it's a big 3 projects. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great job, everybody. Thank you.
With that, before adjourning, just wish everybody a really, really happy Memorial Day. I'll put in a plug for my wife's favorite charity, which is Post 53. Please go to the food fair. And that's Post's biggest fundraiser. So please go to the food fair. With that, could I get a motion to adjourn? Paul, Jameson seconds, all in favor. Aye. Thanks, you guys. Thank you very much. And especially, and also Dave Martin, thank you so much for drilling into these numbers and understanding them so quickly. Really appreciate it, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night.